Summer's here, and somewhere between the excitement of planning a big trip and the anxiety of what it's going to cost you, a lot of retirees end up doing something that surprises us. They actually feel guilty about traveling. They worked hard, they saved, they planned for decades, and they start second-guessing that beach vacation. So today what we want to do is talk about how travel fits into a real retirement plan and how you can actually enjoy it without all that guilt.
Welcome to the My Retirement Clarity Podcast, where our goal is simple, to help you close the gap between what you know and what you implement. The team at Perkins Wealth Management does this by helping good people make great decisions so they can enjoy an amazing retirement. And now, here's your host and financial advisor, Lee Perkins.
Welcome in. This is My Retirement Clarity. Glad to have you on the show with us today as we talk about travel. Lee, you got any beach trips planned this summer?
I've usually planned to go to the beach, around the 4th of July week, but my daughter has taken over my condo, and she told me that week. I mean, she's living there this summer. She's working part-time, living her best life on my dime, as most of our kids do nowadays. But I told her I was coming there on the 4th, and she's like, yeah, that's going to be a problem because she invited 5 of her friends from college, and then my son and by that point, they'll be married. His wife are staying there too. So I don't have anywhere to go when we go to St. Simon's at the condo that we have. So if I want to go to St. Simon's, maybe I have to rent a condo somewhere, which is crazy. But she did offer to rent me a room in my own condo. So I do like her entrepreneurial spirit. But part of me just wants to say, hey, I'm coming. Y'all sleep on the floor, and we'll go from there. But of course, my wife is not having that.
Yeah. That's funny. Well, good stuff. I know travel is a big part. There's some great beaches around here in a short driving distance. So take advantage of the summer. Enjoy that if you're out and traveling. But today we're going to talk about travel and how it fits into your budget. We don't want you to feel guilty. Like that's the whole point of planning, is to make sure you can enjoy the money you've worked so hard for. Lee, we'll jump to that in a second. I know also into the summer, you guys have the grand opening for the new office. That's the target date, right?
Yeah. So our plan right now is to move in probably the last week of July, and I think everything's going to be ready before then, but we want to make sure we have furniture in and everything is where it needs to be. And then sometime in August, we want to make sure everything's ready. We will do a grand opening celebration. It's going to be good. The office is a great space. We'll have a radio station out there. We've already kind of arranged to do a remote from there, and we'll have all our clients come celebrate with us, and just it's going to be exciting. I can't wait.
I love that. Well, go ahead and reach out to the office if you want to learn more about that upcoming day. But I'm sure Lee will put out some more information as we get a little bit closer to that. But excited for that grand opening and you guys moving in, Lee. So should be a lot of fun. Let's talk today about this vacationing and planning for travel, Lee, because this is a big part. A lot of people want to travel. It's a priority for a lot of retirees, but it can be hard to overcome that feeling of, hey, I'm spending a lot of money right now. Should I be doing this?
Yeah, especially early on when somebody retires, they've been working for all the amount of years, and they've done some type of budget ahead of time, and they kind of have an idea of what they're going to spend. But man, when you start thinking about what a vacation costs and what the food costs when you go out to eat, it sort of adds up, and your mind starts to play tricks on you. So I've found that the best thing to do is you got to budget, and you got to give yourself permission to spend money. And I know we'll kind of get into it on the show, but this past weekend I went to a wealth management conference, and Morgan Housel spoke. And years ago, he wrote a book, one of my favorite books on money. It's called The Psychology of Money. And he was there kind of promoting his new book, which is called The Art of Spending Money. And man, it's not as easy as we may think. Right. Although I always joke on the show that my wife and my daughter they're all pros at spending money. I know I spend money as well, as do a lot of us, but man, it seems to change psychologically when you get into retirement and that paycheck stops. So you gotta budget that and make sure that you are giving yourself permission to spend, and just allocate that ahead of time.
Well, let's dig into it a little bit. I know as you're building financial plans with people, Lee, do you actually make travel and vacation something that's a part of the plan?
Yes. Yeah, we do. So the way we kind of do it, I mean, we have the planning tools and planning softwares that we do, but the way I kind of address it is early on when we're showing, kind of giving giving people's money a purpose, and we draw this out so they can see it. I want people to have a bucket of money, or actually the way I explain it is I want you to have 2 savings accounts. One that's truly for emergency funds. So you got to put a new roof on that's not covered by insurance, or you've got to put a new transmission in your car, those kind of things that are true emergencies. But then have a savings account that is for trips / stuff. And that's kind of what I call it. Stuff is not a technical term, but it's if you want to buy things. So if you have that money set aside, then I've found that actually gives you permission to spend the money. I've told the story, I think, on the show before. I had a client years ago that canceled it was about a $3,000 or $4,000 cruise. So it wasn't a very expensive trip, but he canceled it because the stock market went down 500 points one day and like 400 the next day. And this was early in retirement, and he probably, for him, 2 years into retirement, never taken a dime of his money. And so he saw his account dropped, maybe $10,000 or $15,000, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, we can't do the trip." And I was like, "All right, we got to fix that." So now I want people just to know that they have money set aside. That's what that's for, and let's don't cancel trips.
Yeah, absolutely. This is why you plan, why you build a plan. If you want to do that with Lee, again, talkwithjlp.com. That is the website to get on Lee's calendar right now, talkwithjlp.com. Now, I know when you're planning for travel, it's not just hey, we got to allocate this amount of money every year through retirement, right? Because there is a little bit of a rhythm to how retirees spend, right? It's not done equally over time, is it?
No, it's not. And what we generally see is early on, people will go and do some of the bigger trips, the bigger bucket list trips, and that's fine. I've got a couple that they are world-class travelers, and they do really nice trips. They don't skimp out on anything. They fly first class. They're getting the best cabins when they go on cruises. So they're doing it the right way. I think they went to Australia, and they did not skimp one single bit. Now, as they're aging a little bit, I think they told me they did 8 or 10 fairly big size trips last year, but they're starting to slow down. They said this year we'll probably do 5. And then they said probably in the next 3 years, they may not want to fly anymore. And that's just the natural evolution of what happens as we get older, and we don't enjoy being 20 hours on a plane. We just don't. And so budgeting X amount per year, every year, can work for a little while, but those numbers are going to change. They just will, and the places that you go are going to change too.
Yeah, they definitely will. And so that's something to keep in mind as you're planning. Right? Think about when you're going to travel, when you're going to have the energy, when you have more time to do that and more effort to do that. So something to kind of keep in mind there.
Hey folks, Lee Perkins here. I wanted to tell you about our brand new book called Next Phase: How to Retire in a Year or Less Without Regrets. It's all about helping you prepare for the next phase of your life, whatever that looks like for you. So, if you're ready to make the most of your next phase, or if you're already retired and aren't sure you're doing all you can to get the most out of your retirement, then you'll want a copy of this book. All you have to do is text Next Phase to 478-475-2050, and we'll send you a copy right away. You can also access additional resources and register for one of our upcoming workshops at our website, www.myretirementclarity.com. Thanks for listening. Now back to the show.
When you work with people too, Lee, again, this is part of the retirement planning, is not everybody's looking at retirement the same way in terms of lifestyle and travel. And I'm sure there are plenty of couples you've worked with that don't really see eye to eye on how much they want to travel or how much they should be spending on travel. So how do you have those conversations?
Yeah, like I've said on the podcast before, I'm a full-time financial planner and a part-time marital counselor. So I think a lot of those conversations, sometimes I feel like they happen only in our office, and this is the first time where there's, quote, the airing of the grievances towards one another on their spending habits when it comes to travel. But it's a balancing act. It's got to be a give and take from the other side. You can't always win, and that's just marriage 101. But if the money's there, what I try to do is listen to a couple and not choose sides, and just ultimately let them know, hey, you can afford this. You don't have to when you go to a restaurant, you don't have to order the cheapest thing off of a menu when you're traveling overseas. If you're going there, enjoy it. Don't spend money to go somewhere and skimp out on maybe it's a tour or something like that. That if you're going there, man, do it right while you're there, because chances are you may not go back to the same place. There's so many places in not only the world, but in our country that are awesome, and you could travel all the time and never go to the same place twice. So while you're there, live in that moment, but make sure that you're budgeting the way that you need to, and ultimately that there's got to be some give and take from each member of the spouse, each spouse before you head on. So talk about it before you go. Don't wait till you're there and argue about whether or not you want to pay for a $35 bus tour of whatever city you're in.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. What about planning ahead for travel, Lee? I mean, how far ahead should you be looking? I know a lot of people just think about that next trip and do a lot of budgeting for that and a lot of planning for that. But how far out should you be looking and thinking about travel in retirement?
This varies from couple to couple. There are people that probably plan out their travel over the next 3 years, and I've heard them do that. And sometimes they'll get better deals on places if they prepay a year in advance, and that's fine. It may limit you a little bit if you put a deposit on something that's not going to happen for 3 years, because a lot can change. So I try to tell people to give yourself enough wiggle room so that if something changes, that you can at least get deposits back or things like that. But at least I think a year in advance is good. This is something that I have talked about many times before, is the fact that people spend more time planning for their vacations and their trips than they do planning for their retirement before they retire. That, it's just how it is, because planning for retirement is not as glamorous and not as fun as planning for a trip. So I would say at least a year in advance, so that you can budget accordingly. And if you're somebody who is of RMD age, maybe you go ahead and earmark that RMD that you have to take, that forced income, earmark that for something that you can spend on trips rather than just sticking it in the bank and nothing ever happens to that money. So give that required minimum distribution, that forced income that the government gives you, give that money a purpose.
Yeah, I like that. Give that money a purpose for sure. All right. One last thing. Let's talk travel expenses that maybe catch people off guard. Do you see any common themes when people travel that maybe they have a couple costs that creeped up that they hadn't thought about, or maybe wish they would have thought about?
Not really. I mean, different people do it different ways. Some people will spend money on things like travel insurance, and those people get it, and that's not an unexpected cost for them. Some people don't see the value in travel insurance. But I think once, if you get burned one time or your situation changes and you're out some money because something happened, then you're probably going to be more of a fan of travel insurance. But I think most of the times people are pretty aware of that. I would tell you that one of the things that I'm hearing just when people come into the office is they have a trip planned to wherever. Just say they go to Disney, and then all of a sudden now they've got their kids and grandkids coming, and then they feel sometimes obligated to pay for that trip. And some people will, offer to do that, but you could take what was going to be a $5,000 trip to wherever you're going. And if you're treating your kids and grandkids, that could be a 10 or 15 or sometimes a $20,000 trip, which is not a bad thing. I've seen more and more grandparents, rather than just giving their kids and grandkids money, as they start to give away money, kind of pre-planning for inheritances, start to spend that money on travel, and let's go as a family and explore these things together. That's a really cool thing, and I think a neat thing to do that I didn't really see probably 10 years ago, but I see it more and more nowadays.
That's really cool. Listen, the bottom line is, look, vacations are going to be a big part of retirement. They should be, right? You've worked hard, you saved, you've gotten here. You want to be able to spend that money, enjoy that money, but it takes planning, right? It takes some proper planning and working with a team that can help you with that. That's exactly what J.L. Perkins Wealth Management can do. It's just part of the overall planning process, but it is a fun piece, right? So have some conversations about that. Make sure you're taking trips that you can truly enjoy and not feel guilt about. Easiest way to do that, go to talkwithjlp.com. You can schedule a meeting right there, talkwithjlp.com, or call the office directly. The number is 478-254 3550. That'll do it for us here on another episode of My Retirement Clarity. Thanks for being a part of the show. Please subscribe. And Lee, hope you have a great week.
You too. Take care. Hey there, Lee Perkins here. If you're like a lot of folks, you've been listening to this podcast for a long time now. But I've got an important question for you. Have you implemented any of the ideas that we've discussed on the show? If you haven't, what are you waiting on? You know you're not getting any younger. So here's my challenge. Don't just consume the content. Our number one goal for this podcast is to help you close the gap between what you know and what you implement. So if you're ready to implement, take that first step today and visit www.talkwithjlp.com and schedule a 15-minute phone call with one of our advisors, and we'll help you close the gap between what you know and what you implement so you can enjoy the next phase of your life. Now is your time. Don't procrastinate any longer.
Investment advisory services are offered by J.L. Perkins Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor and insurance agency. Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, legal, or investment advice. Always consult with a qualified tax, legal, or investment professional before taking any action.